Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with another selection for Pride Month. This selection comes at us from there we go. Nero MXXN2252. Anything by Adrianne Lenker. It's such a beautiful but gut-wrenching song about a sapphic relationship. One of the best songs from her and from this decade as well, in their opinion. For a second, I read that as anything, like I could pick anything I wanted from them. And then it was like, this is a beautiful song. And I was like, wait. I thought I could pick it, but no. The song is called Anything, and what's funny is I went through the same thought process when I read the comment initially before I got everything together, and it still threw me for a loop now after having gone through that process at least once already. This is probably like the third time I've been thrown up by this. Anyways, let's dig into this, see what Adrianne Lenker is bringing to the table with Anything. It's beautiful artwork too. They have a little shaker for percussion background, acoustic guitar, dual vocals, double tracked slightly off. It's a nice chord progression. It's beautiful, it's uplifting, but it has just a tad bit of darkness in it, primarily for contrast, I think, but also to complicate the emotional resonance. Nice little break here. Oh, it is a little break. It did highlight a little bit of the violin back there that I think has been there the whole time, but has been overshadowed. It's very quiet. Oh, interesting. Yeah, general fade out there. A lot of silence at the end of this track. Oh, that's because there's still a little bit of playing there. Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be a short one. I can already feel it. This is a single section song. While we do have a verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, I think, as far as the lyrics are concerned, musically it is just a single A section all the way through. We have the little shaker sound in the background. We have the acoustic guitar giving us a little bit of rhythmic bum ba ba bum ba 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 bum ba ba bum ba ba bum. It has a little bit of movement to it, a little bit of syncopation, but for the most part is there for the harmonic element. And then we have the lead vocals, which aren't really ever interested in holding out notes. It's a lot of movement and a lot of notes within bars coming from that melody. There is, of course, the violin that sits in the background of all of this, giving us these long held out notes. As I mentioned, I barely picked up on it up until the bridge when the vocals cut out, but when I listened for it after that and the vocals came back, they were consistently present. So it makes me think that that violin part had been there the entire time, just completely overshadowed by what the vocals were doing. Not just overshadowed compositionally, but also production wise. The violin is very quiet and the vocals are loud, and they're both center channel. They're both in the same range, too. So there just isn't much of a chance for that vocal line to be present within it, which I guess is probably the point of it. I don't know if there's some deeper meaning to it or if it's just a little bit of extra texture that they decided to add in to the track, but yeah, it is very distant in the mix. And that's the entire song. The bridge cuts out the vocals, but we come back, we bring them back in for the final verse and chorus. And there is one oddity, though. In the final chorus, there was a specific line where I heard some high-end crackle, some distortion, audio distortion, not from production, but seemingly from some instrument being too loud. One of the lines just being very loud and naturally distorting. I thought it was interesting, but possibly just a one-off, a little mistake that they left in because the take was so good. And honestly, I doubt very many people are going to hear it. But right after that, there's also a bit of a screechy whistle sound that pierces through everything. It's the only moment when there's any sort of sonic change to the song, and it's two rogue ideas that I don't understand their purpose within it. And they come back to back in a way that makes me think that maybe they're not separate. I don't quite understand what's going on there. If anybody has some insight into that, let me know. Like I mentioned, the clipping I felt could have just been an oversight or a compromise. But it back to back with that a little screech, I don't know. It was an odd choice. Now, the other thing I want to talk about here is the production on the vocals. And this is what I think it alters my relationship to the song because without it, and we have a very good picture of what that looks like, which is the bridge. It's the song without the vocals. It's a very straightforward folk pop track. Indie folk might be the name for the genre. I don't know. Very poppy vocals, very palatable, modern type of acoustic instrumentation, but very pop production, pop vocal work that goes along with the folkier elements, and a very folk style of structure, which usually folk is just A B A B A B A B, and this is just A all the time, at least again from a musical standpoint. And so, if the vocals had been double tracked perfectly, or not double tracked at all and modified in production in a different way to achieve the width that they might have been aiming for, it would have been, I think, something that just blends into the modern scape of indie folk. Not anything in here to really differentiate it, but they went a different route. They took two different takes of the vocal lines with plenty of imperfections between them, or inconsistencies, I think would be the word for it. A lot of the times when you have your vocalist do a second take, you want them to be as close to the first as possible. So when you overlay them, there's no difference, or very little difference. Here we have a ton of difference. Syllables get started just a hair bit earlier on one of the takes. They end just a hair bit behind or ahead on other takes. The intonation is not perfect. There's just a hair bit of warble going on here. There's definitely not a lot of pitch correction going on here. And honestly, it wouldn't have taken that much. Adrianne has a beautiful voice and does a great job at hitting the pitches. It's just that by yourself, if you can lay down a single vocal track, it's pretty easy to create something, especially with such a wide range that you can play within and still sound good. And that is to say that the harmonic structure here is rather simple. It gives a lot of leeway to the melody line, and it's the necessity for perfection in intonation isn't quite as large. You can be a little rough around the corners and still create something that is fairly palatable. But the thing is, if you record it again, you're going to have new types of imperfections, new types of intonation changes. Even if you're still singing that A note, what if you're just 2 cents sharp on one take and 1 cent flat on the other? To the ear, imperceptible. But when you put that +2 and that -1 together and you overlay them, you're going to create a ton of dissonance. And that's what happens here. And the thing is if they had put some pitch correction on that, we could have adjusted that 2 down, the 1 up, and it would have sounded perfect. And it still would have sounded human. It wouldn't have had that autocorrect digitization to it, because it would be such a minor shift. And it's what makes layering so much easier if you're not a perfectionist. You don't feel like taking 500 recording takes attempting to get identical performances 2 different times. They just chose not to go that route entirely. Whatever imperfections were in the takes is what they stuck with. And while I think the different lengths and attacks, when they come in on notes, when they end their notes, that kind of stuff is a bit more relaxed. If it's not perfect, it's fine generally. But the intonation thing is interesting because it takes a song that is completely harmonious on every aspect, from the musical harmony to the vocal melody to even the melodic aspects of the guitar. Everything is done in a consonantly harmonious way and introduces dissonance in that consonance. No instruments are really wrong here, but we have two instruments that are just different enough to introduce this wrongness in a sense. I find that to be really interesting, especially for something that I think is a love song based off of the few lyrics I picked up, although the requester did mention that it was a bit of a gut-wrenching song, I think is what they said. So we'll get into the lyrics a little bit. Maybe that dissonance is there to imply the darkness that, well, honestly, I kind of felt with the harmony. I did mention this is a beautiful track, and it is 100%. Everything is done with consonant harmony in mind. Everything is designed to work and support the other things that are at play with it. And for the most part, the harmony is beautiful and uplifting and cheerful, but the laid back tempo and the little hint of dissonance we get throughout the chord progression, which primarily I think is there to add contrast so that we can have resolution, we can have this ebb and flow rather than just sitting at one level all the time. We have positivity and a little bit of negativity, and then positivity, and we get this ebb and flow between the two. It's just a very natural idea to create tension within a chord progression. But I think it also does house a little bit of darkness for the story. In particular, when we get to the chorus, there's actually a small change. And I didn't really mention this earlier because generally, I don't think it has that large of an impact on the structure. But it does have a little bit of an impact here, and that our chord progression changes from 4 chords to 3 chords. Our third chord typically points us towards our fourth chord. Here, the third chord points us towards the fourth, and then we just hang on to the third another section rather than moving to the fourth, and then we move to the first again. We skip the fourth entirely by hanging on to this tension that's here. It was an interesting decision that I didn't really think much of because hanging on to a third chord isn't revolutionary. But that mixed with the tension that it is, the tension in the vocals, and the little bit of darkness I feel within the song, I think is intended to create these pockets of anxiety, of just not positivity that the rest of the song aims for. There is a dark underbelly to this track, and it makes me want to get into the lyrics. So that's where we're going next. So this is partially a love song, but it's remembrance of the good and the bad of a relationship. It is a song that professes one's love to a relationship that is no longer alive. It is a song, well, to an ex, which I assumed was in the annotations as you have to know more about the artist to know that this is what this is about. But no, there's actually a part much later on in the song when there is a name drop of the ex. So it seems very deliberately pointed towards this person. But regardless, it talks about some of the good times. Says, hanging your jeans with a clothespin, skin still wet, still on my skin, mango in your mouth, juice dripping, shoulder of your shirt, sleeve slipping. Remembering the small times in the relationship, just how your shirt sleeve used to slip down a little off your shoulder. Um, those small little moments that I think most people don't tend to remember, but can hold very powerful images. Verse 2, though, talks about Christmas Eve with the in laws and getting into a fight and a little bit of depression sinking in and some of the bad things. It says, there's a grocery store list. Well, now you're pissed. There's unchecked calls and messages. I don't want to be the owner of your fantasy. I just want to be a part of your family. This differing ideas of love. It seems that one person in a relationship has this fantastical vision of what the relationship is, and the other one just wants something very domestic. I just want to be, I just want to be your family. That kind of idea. And we see this throughout the track. Verse 3 once again kind of goes into more of a positive side, looking at some of the better times of the relationship. And verse 4 looks at some of the more negative ones, including when the relationship ended. And the chorus takes us into a bit of worship, maybe. It really depends on how you want to look into this. It says, I don't want to talk about anything. I just want to kiss your eyes again. I want to witness your eyes looking. I want to sleep in your car while you're driving. I want to lay in your lap when I'm crying. I want to have that relationship again. But I can't. And yeah, very, I suppose gut wrenching is a good term for this. And I really like how it's measured as well. This isn't a breakup song of I hate you and you ruined my life and I'm glad we're over. And it's not completely bawling, I miss you and I wish everything was the way it was and everything was so good and we should get back together. It's a middle point. It remembers the lows, it remembers the highs, and it just kind of wishes, not necessarily, it doesn't even say I want the relationship back again. I just want to have that connection with you. I want to be able to lay in your lap when I'm crying. I want to look at your eyes while you're looking at something else. Just that intimacy. It's not so much about the relationship, it's about that intimacy. And like I said, it feels very measured because of that. It doesn't swing one way or the other. It's very vulnerable and very, oh, in a sense, methodical. I don't think a lot of people would say that a very emotional song like this would have a very critical, methodical lens to it. But I think this kind of does, and it doesn't remove from the emotional aspect of it. And I think all of this matches well with the music. There's a lot of positivity in the music, and there's a lot of remembering the good times and wanting to have some of that back. But there is some darkness in the music as well, and I think those are the little croppings of the memories that weren't so great. And the song and the lyrics both acknowledge that the relationship was all of that. But regardless, there's still this need for closeness, this want for that closeness. Again, not necessarily a physical closeness, but this other person knows you in a way that most don't, and you know them in a way that most don't. And it's hard to get that back in any relationship. Sometimes it's easier just to want that thing back again. Those are my thoughts. Adrianne Lenker's Anything. What do you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you just want to give me your own thoughts, opinions, or perspective on this. Let me know what's up. Toss all that stuff down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps this one up. And wraps the week up as well. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to be checking out a full album. And Sunday at 11 a.m. EST and 3 p.m. UTC, we'll be doing a live stream. Goes for 2 hours. We're going to check out some cool music, hang out, chit chat about stuff. Sometimes music related, sometimes not music related. It is very chill. If you can make it, drop on by. See what it's all about. It's a blast. And then, of course, Monday we'll be back with next week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.